I'm Scott Logan, the CMO of Amplify, and we welcome you to the opening keynote session of the AI for CX Virtual Summit, where we're bringing you the latest insights and best practices around AI and the customer experience. A quick word from our sponsor, Amplify. At Amplify, we unify all your data, structured and unstructured, voicemail to email, virtual agents, social, internal systems, everything there is, all into one single view of performance. With this single view of your data, Amplify delivers role-specific insights and AI recommended best actions, next best actions to increase agent performance and coaching. Our comprehensive CX suite includes everything from auto QA to AI-powered coaching and gamification. Over 10,000 teams worldwide use Amplify to boost productivity, improve customer experience, and drive better results in sales, support, and collections and beyond. All right, before we get started, let's do a quick round robin of the panelists that we have with us today. Since there's two Johns, we'll go JP for John Pollan. So JP, you want to kick us off?
That makes it easy, doesn't it? Very nice to be here. Thank you for including me. My name is John Paulin, or JP from this point forward. I am the Director of Sales Engineering at Avant Communications, specifically for our CX and AI practice. So I manage a team of engineers that help customers flesh out their AI strategies and align their requirements with vendors to help shorten that sales cycle and help them in making an informed buying decision. I've been with Avant since 2016 and I am based in Cleveland. And a little fun fact for me is that my wife and I are underway of building our forever home here in Cleveland. Some of you might be rolling your eyes and thinking, why would you do that to yourself, Northeast Ohio? But that is what we call home. We love it, and that's the big news in our life.
All right, the other John, John Heaps, go for it.
Oh, thank you, Scott, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. John Heaps, I'm Vice President of Channel and Partner Sales globally for Sonus. A little bit about Sonus. We're the world's first real-time speech understanding platform with accent translation, noise cancellation with bi-directional capabilities. We deliver crystal clear communication with real-time speech-to-speech AI technology. So excited to be part of this panel and the discussion and where you're taking it.
Fantastic. And John or Sean, bring us home.
All right, thanks, Scott. Hi, everybody. Sean Minter, founder and CEO of Amplify. Started Amplify in the 2018 timeframe. I've gotten a lot bigger since then. But my background in the past, I've done everything from running a BPO call center operations to running three different telco carriers and started three different telecom companies. So lots of different technology and call center background.
Fantastic. All right, so let's kick things off. First, I'll frame the discussion for this session. Customer expectations are super high and unpredictable, especially as more channels come out and people are interacting in much different ways. But just adding an AI agent without aligning to a specific challenge, you likely worsen your customer experience. We just had a meeting with a Gartner analyst who specializes in this, and this is what they had to say. With AI, contact center operators can now build far more robust workflows with AI agents themselves. Of course, it is key to start an AI agent with simple transactional engagements. However, as companies scale the number of interactions and use cases, IT still has to be brought in to improve the programming. So, using other AI solutions focused on CX like Amplify and others, both IT and contact center operators can be on the same page around which customer performance issues need to improve and what actions to take with both AI and human agents. AI should be applied to both. So that's why it's so important to build a framework for ongoing innovation. Customer needs are changing, the AI tech is evolving super fast, and nobody wants their customer experience to be stuck in 2010, but there needs to be a defined goal-oriented strategy. So with that, today we'll hear from our experts about those topics, the strategy, aligning to business outcomes, and tackling AI adoption. Let's start with the first question around how to set an AI strategy before evaluating tools. Sean, kick us off with what are the challenges you most often see when you speak to CX contact center leaders?
I think if I'm on the other side of this as a customer trying to determine what's happening in the AI world, the challenge is there's so much happening and so many things being talked about. it's hard to figure out exactly what I should be focused on because I can solve and how do I determine how to focus on kind of depends on the problems I'm solving. And so I think the first step for any organization as they're trying to get in this journey is to identify and prioritize, because there's so many problems, what problems to solve for. And then second behind that is how do you get access to the information to solve those problems, right? Because the biggest challenge with AI or any technology, to be honest, AI is just another solution to different kinds of problems. You don't have to have AI in everything. But how do you get access to the data, especially in an organization that has data sitting in lots of different systems and locations to be able to solve those problems? Because nothing is just standalone typically. Customer data sits in one place, call data sits in another place, survey data sits in another place. If you're trying to improve customer experience, you got data sitting everywhere else as an example. So how do I get access to my data so I can use AI and other technology on top of it becomes probably the first challenge you have to really think about. Because without that, you can't really solve the problems you want to solve for.
Yeah, data is a huge issue. It's siloed, not updated enough, very manual, lives all over the place. How do you actually effectively address it? John Heaps, do you have another perspective on another challenge that we're facing?
Yeah, I think we often talking about AI and then also doing away with the human agent. And I think you mentioned that in your quote with Gartner, that the human agent is not going away, but bringing AI together with the human agent is really the most powerful and effective way. Giving you that additional data, but they still want to speak to a human. And it's a lot more impactful what you can do because people still want to speak to somebody and get their problem resolved in the most effective way. But secondly, when you look at this, the strategy for the vision, that sets the vision. What is your strategy? And tools will just support that strategy. So before picking the tools, you need to define what is it you want to achieve with AI. Are you looking to reduce your agent workload, improve customer experience, or drive efficiency or cost savings? The tools should be chosen to execute the strategy in which your executives are trying to build around. And that makes the selection faster and smarter and really more future-proof, everything that you're trying to do. So it's not just a one size fits all, but what is the strategy and how do you solve for that?
Yeah, and that's a good point on the empower the human agents because they're not going away. In fact, we've pulled some data here recently where we're seeing the increase in human agents is slowing a little bit, but and the adoption of AI agents is increasing greatly in the last year or two. However, the number of interactions that are happening from the going into the contact center, hockey sticks,
Yeah.
way up. Because there's so many ways to bring questions to a company. So many times folks are like, I can just do this by myself through some of these interaction tools and we can solve them. But if you don't know what the issues are that are coming in from this massive increase of interactions, it's hard to address how do I effectively help the people in this new world and how do I effectively help the self-service in this new world. So in relation to the AI journeys, can you add a little bit more depth to that, JP?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you look at this, most of the large companies are still outsourcing to India, Philippines, Latin America, other places where it's more cost effective. And that's really one of the challenges that we've solved for at Sonus. The challenge has always been when you call into those agents, the accent has been a barrier. They're not being able to be understood. And people just want to be understood. They just want to have their problem solved. They can't get it resolved with an AI agent. They just want to talk to an agent. Then they get an agent that's in India or the Philippines, and we don't understand their accent. So the frustration gets escalated. And then the bias that comes in and so on. And that's what Sonus has been able to do is we've been able to take the technology, AI technology, and remove the accent by talking to a human agent and having that problem and having them understand the problem and you understanding them, they can solve the problem and the problem goes away very quickly. And then the customer experience scores go way up just because they're able to go through and have a positive experience.
Yeah. And John Pollan, on the challenges, are you seeing differences in what challenges people are bringing to the table today versus maybe 1, 2, 3 years ago?
I think the challenges are still relatively the same. There's a need to improve customer service, retain agents, reduce the handle time it takes to address any given interaction. So I think there some new challenges will arise. For example, how do you manage the AI that is implemented? That's going to be a new set of challenges versus managing people. But the thing I see often as a TSD, technology service distributor, that is vendor neutral, we're really kind of a consulting type of benefit to customers to help understand where they're at, where they want to be. And I'm often brought in at the very outset, the beginning of an engagement typically.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that there's one of the biggest challenges is people just don't know where to start. They know they need to start, that you've mentioned a lot of the challenges they may have, and there's a temptation to boil the ocean. But I think it comes down to what are some of the, I hate using this term, but low-hanging fruit. What are the easier opportunities that are not going to be too disruptive that can be a benefit to the bottom line? One of them is noise cancellation and accent reduction. That doesn't require really any change in workflow. Agents kind of just go about their day as they have been. So that'd be an example of a quick win. But I think it starts with having that soul searching moment of what are we really trying to solve for and what first. Tools like AmplifAI can help illuminate what the real problems are and help in that prioritization that we talked about. But I think companies need to be judicious and what is the game plan here, as opposed to just adopting tech for tech's sake. And the last thing I will mention is that somebody at any given company has to own this strategy, has to be the point person that's inevitably going to be the one that's engaging with vendors, helping to define that success criteria and how do you measure whether it's successful or not. Somebody's got to be the point person at that organization. And as somebody that's kind of going through this exercise myself, I know that the importance of, you got to have a quarterback kind of on both sides.
Yeah, exactly. So Sean, on the prioritization, I know that that's always one of the key things that we're evaluating is, well, what's the biggest problem or what's the problem to solve that create the biggest impact? How do you go through that exercise?
Yeah. That's always an interesting task within a large organization, right? Because prioritization and priorities are different for different organizations. So if I think about it in organizations we work with, customer service organizations always care about reducing cost and improving customer experience. You have to do both, not just one or the other. Sales organizations, on the other hand, care more about increasing revenue, not as much on cost reduction, right? They care more about driving revenue. Same with collections. So I think depending on kind of the organization you're in, and then as a corporate level, right, you got sales, care, customer service, all these things coming at you. The thing to think about would be like, are there technologies you can deploy that help everybody, right? Versus just case technologies that are only helping your sales team, but not your customer service team or your tech support team or your collections teams. Are the things that can be done across the board? Because that's what gives an organization the best ROI. And as I think about sort of cost savings, right? Cost savings comes in many, many ways. And every organization has cost savings targets towards reducing call volume. That's going to happen, but honestly, the world of AI and reducing call volume, it's not new. We've been in it for the last 10 years. The amount of volume that's been going to self-service, and to be honest, if you think about the percentage of volume that actually is automated today, if you include self-service, is nearly 40% of all contacts as of the end of 2024 to organizations were done automatically. Not through a chatbot, and the majority of that is self-service, right? Last time you want to change seats on an airline, you don't call them anymore, you just go to the app and do it. You want to book a flight, you just do it online. There's lots of things that organizations have put out that you would normally have called for that have now been moved to what I call self-service automation. But we have more agents today than we did 10 years ago, even though 40% of all volume that used to be there 10 years ago is gone. Well, primarily because companies are doing new things, they're adding new products, new capabilities. It's the easy stuff that gets automated. The complicated stuff is what's getting the humans, and the handle times are going up, which causes more humans to be there for the more complicated stuff. So the whole concept of our people going away is probably not happening. The volume of people going up is going down for sure. But as I think about prioritizing activities in an organization, right? How do I automate conversations? Find the easy low-hanging fruit, push it to self-service. No, push it still to be proven. Like self-service is a proven thing, right? You do lots of volume through self-service. How much volume can you put out to a chatbot or an AI agent? And will that take away from volume that would have gone through your self-service, or just take away from volume? I mean, there's lots of ways that volume is going to shift here, not just all from humans, right? If you roll out an AI agent, maybe people don't go to your app anymore. They just go to the AI agent. So it's not really volume coming from a human anymore. It's volume being taken, cannibalizing another automated option. So lots of those kinds of things are going to happen. But then as you get to the human part, as I said, right, cost reduction is there for everybody, right? How do I reduce cost while I also increase customer experience? And that's where enabling your frontline associates and team leaders and things like that is the best way to kind of drive those kinds of capabilities. Because you already have a process to remove volume. Then of the volume that's left, that's more complicated. Well, how are your people going to manage that more complex volume and handle those kinds of activities and drive those actions? Well, give them AI to help them, right? So AI to remove volume, but also AI to help the people that are left behind to do the more complicated work. I think that's and reduce costs in the process. Reduce cost is always there for every organization.
Yeah. When the AI and the self-service becomes more advanced for those transactional calls, those calls are no longer being handled by the agents. The agents are now having to handle the majority of their day is the complex call. And
Yeah.
so their skill level needs to be raised up. You can't just have a section of your team that now is equipped to handle that. Now they all have to be equipped to handle that. They all have to be coached up to that level. They all have to be trained up to that level. And the ramping period needs to be more robust to get them up to that level because the self-service motions and the AI agent motions are going to become more and more efficient at that. So your metrics, like you were saying, are going to be shifting. Average handle time, it might be okay that it goes up a little bit because that means the AI agent is handling the transactional stuff successfully. So now how do you reassess your goals and your benchmarks, and having a
Yeah.
tool that can give you those new benchmarks becomes super important. John Heaps, on ways to build out the ROI for this new world where your metrics are being reset, your strategies are being reset to match your call volumes of what types of calls are coming in and interactions are coming in. How do you go about defining that to make your business case?
It's a great question. And I've had the privilege of being with a number of different CCaaS providers over the last 20 plus years. And as we've started to see more AI come out and as it started to evolve, but the most effective companies don't just adopt AI for hype, they build around measurable value. And early on, when AI was first coming out, that was the hype. It was just AI is embedded in here. Well, what is it doing? How's it working? What
Yeah.
does it do? And you'd get the two-step shuffle at that point. They couldn't really tell you. So when you really look at it, getting beyond the hype, though, what is the value that it brings? And I think you need to start with real clear business problems. Define the pain points. Sean was talking about that a moment ago. Is it high call volume, long handle times, low CSAT scores, et cetera? But you need to link those to the KPIs that, again, what your executives care about. Is it decrease cost per call? Are you trying to cut the cost there? Are you trying to increase customer satisfaction scores? Or it could be retention and upsell. And that one's very important. Again, and you can't solve those just in some of those bots. The bots can handle the simple problems. But again, we're seeing more and more that they're going into the agents. You need to have an educated agent force. But once again, you have the challenge. Most companies are out offshoring and going to those agents, you have the challenge where the accent can become a challenge of being understood. And so those are some real challenges that you deal with. That's the problem that we've solved for. And if I could, I'll just share an example on this. And it's a company that we work with, which is a large hospitality company. And by implementing Sonus, by being able to remove the accent with their offshore agents, their hotel bookings went up by 50% the first month alone. And their transfer rates went down by 42%, reducing the need for having to be transferred to another agent. People want to call in, they want to talk to an agent, they just want to have their problem solved and have it resolved and move forward. And that's really the issue that it comes back to. So that's how we've used AI to implement that and then really enhancing the agent experience as well as for the customer calling in.
Yeah, that's a great example with increasing the bookings. That's really one of the things that we'd be looking for when implementing any type of a solution. JP, as vendor agnostic, how good are companies at doing this, and any advice you have for them as they say, well, how do we know what to connect, reducing handle time, reducing transfer over to some business metrics like decreased churn, increased bookings, things like that?
The main value I've seen from these tools predominantly is its time savings.
Okay.
Yes, there's upsell, cross-sell opportunities, increased revenue, as John just mentioned, but that can in part be through because tied to time savings. That conversation to get that booking took shorter because there was not less of a communication barrier. So any companies that are looking at this stuff, my first piece of advice, like what are those activities within your operation that take the most time? What's a vampire in essence, sucking your life force out because these things are taking much longer than they need to? Maybe it is quality assurance. You're only able to sample X percentage of interactions because you're limited by time. Your supervisors are. Machines, on the other hand, are not. And they can do that at scale and quickly identify in all that noise what are the things, good, bad, or neutral, that the human supervisors or those that are monitoring that information, what do they need to focus their time and attention on? Perhaps we want to reduce the time it takes to bring an agent to proficiency so that he or she is now able to field interactions, reducing the handle time. But also a reduction in handle time is, as you said earlier, it depends on the interaction. A longer handle time may be beneficial if it's because that agent is now armed with cross-sell, upsell scripting that takes the conversation from a kind of a break fix thing or whatever it was to a sales opportunity. So that's why I want to focus exclusively on just how do we reduce the time it takes for interactions to occur. That is one safe area to look at because perhaps that will reveal that part of the reason things are taking longer than they should be is because agents have to put folks on hold. They have to go find the answer from a more seasoned person as opposed to having that information displayed in front of them in a timely manner. So as you're thinking about this, listeners, what are those activities that are consuming a lot of time, but also could be relatively transactional to address? Those will represent the meaningful but less disruptive opportunities for you to prove the value of this technology.
Yeah. And then, Sean, you could add some perspective on internal facing AI tools where you're using it to increase agent performance. You're using AI for coaching, for auto QA. What are some of those internal ROI benefits you can connect back to the business?
Well, I'll jump on JP's discussion about time savings, right? Because as you think about ROIs, some ROIs are soft, like you improve your CSAT, NPS. Well, how do you go to your CFO and say, I need to spend X dollars to do that? And how do I pay for that? But some hard ROIs are really things like time savings, right? Like for an auto QA team, I can automate the QA process, reduce my QA staff, and have a higher sample size. You kind of get the best of everything and a hard cost savings to justify that project because there's dollars associated with savings that more than pays for it. Using AI to automate internal hard things is probably the easiest use case, to be honest with you. It's not customer facing. QA is one of those items. What are the other areas of labor within a contact center, right? You have agents. If you don't touch the agents, you have quality teams, you have team leaders and supervisors. What can you do to automate stuff they do, right? All the gathering of the data, all the time figuring out which agent needs help with what, all the types of things you have to do to manage and coach and develop and engage and recognize and all that stuff they have to do. How can I give them time savings, right? That's another part Amplify does. Amplify really is focused on improving that overhead labor cost to manage the contact centers. The quality teams, the team leaders, the supervisors, the operations managers, give them time savings because ultimately when you give them time savings, that's what leads to better agents because then they can spend that time that they're saving with their agents to improve their performance and work with them and engage them and motivate them, reduce attrition, improve performance, all the things that everybody wants to do. But unfortunately, nobody can because we've taken the contact center and made it so labor intensive. People don't have time to spend with their agents. They're running around chasing reports and data and metrics and listening to calls and just generating information, but not actioning it properly. So actioning that data and getting the time savings, I think, is the key and one of the easiest use cases for AI because you can do that and get a hard ROI on it.
Yeah, I was on a customer call a couple weeks ago where the woman said, wow, having all the data together, seeing it with the actions in place, now I can actually do all the robust program building that I've been wanting to do, but I've been spending all my time bringing this data to life and using my experience to basically be the AI engine. So even if they are already doing that, now they can just be better and do the fun work of building out these programs and seeing the success happen within the business, as
And
opposed to
kind
just
of
spending
adding
time
on
in
to
the
that a little
bureaus.
bit, right? As you think about any time you have to do a project that affects the contact center and you have to go get an ROI on it, there's going to have to be a model and financials. Another challenge always is how hard is it to implement and how hard is it to
Mhm.
support, right? Because and then you have to just make sure you're selecting the right vendors because when you're doing these pilots and these AI projects, you're not just selecting a vendor that's going to give you technology and leave, and then leave it up to you to figure out how to get the ROI that you signed up for. Somebody that's going to actually help you with the implementation. Somebody's going to help you generate the ROI. So vendor selection and support, to be honest with you, and getting the right support is just as important as the technology, right? The technology by itself probably doesn't solve all your problems because somebody just gives you technology that you never use. It's never going to give you an ROI. Getting a technology with the right level of support capability and onboarding and implementation support, that's what gets you the benefit as a business.
All right, you transitioned us into the last topic of AI adoption. So let's put your money where your mouth is. And what are some of the keys to successful adoption and use beyond just getting the software up and running? How do you actually get to that point of realization?
Well, I think the number one key to having a good project is defining a problem very clearly that you want to solve and exactly what you're going to do to solve it, and not having something vague without an understanding of what's going to happen. Because that's where projects go haywire. Is you're trying to do something vague, you want to put it in, you cross your fingers, and you hope it's going to work. Unfortunately, that's the scenario where things never work.
Yeah.
Having a concrete problem to solve and spending the time up front to figure out exactly what you want to do, so that when you do execute, you execute on it properly is a very important part. And you have to do that to build the ROIs and things anyway, because you could just hurry up and make some numbers up and then not deliver on them, and then your organization won't roll it forward. And then you wasted all this time doing a pilot for 6 months or something for absolutely no reason, where you could have had a more concrete project. So having a clearly defined problem to solve, have a clearly defined vendor that's going to help you solve it, have a clearly defined process on what the vendor is going to do, how they're going to support you, how you're going to implement it, helping you with the implementation. I think that's the key because technology, you can put technology out the wazoo into contact centers. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of organizations try to do that. It works only if you actually are solving a problem and the people on the vendor side and the client side are both aligned with the resources to make that happen. So selecting the right vendors, having the right problem, and having a problem that's easy to get a ROI on is important.
John Heaps, you work a lot with the agents, obviously, with the solutions that it provides. Can you give us some keys to what you've seen work real well for just in general agent-facing types of technology?
Yeah, and I think Sean was right. I think obviously we need to define the problem and really understand what the problem is you're trying to solve and what the ROI is, but define that with the customer before you ever go into it. And I think it's important that we go into a process like that and choosing the vendor that you have a POC, that you can go in and do the POC before you ever go forward with this to really prove it out that it's working. It's doing exactly what you said it was going to do. Too many times you see companies that will just sell the technology and assume that that's going to fix all the problems. That's just the beginning, what you're trying to do. But having that solution, that implementation that's going to take you all the way through that, which is one of the reasons what we do is we literally have people on site and they're on site for the full week, getting them up and running and working through that entire process to move that forward. And so that you can see the proof of concept. It is working, how it's working, how it effectively working with your agents, how they can work that. And then when you're moving forward, it's a very simple problem. And then you have a very successful customer moving forward.
Yeah, having those clear definitions, having the person or the company on site to help work through the program that's been laid out with those definitions. JP, with seeing such a wide array of things being implemented out there, what are some of the pitfalls people can avoid outside of the definition and having a really clear process? Or maybe that's it.
Well, you have to know what you're shopping for. So that's where having defined success criteria, if we're going to buy this or adopt this solution, this is what we hope the impact will be. One of the questions we love to ask at the outset is, how do you want things to be different a year from now? Before we even talk
Mm.
about the specific technology, what are you trying, what's What isn't working in your mind, in your opinion? And maybe that answer is like, we just don't know. We lack visibility. We know that we have problems, but we don't know in what order to fix them or necessarily how to fix them. So starts with that. I also love to ask this question of like, what happens if you do nothing? There's the cost of inaction. There is an opportunity cost there. And that will spur some ideas about, well, what is the real intention of us going down this path? As for like a game plan, some advice, if you're listening and you are of the mindset, we need to do something, but I don't want to buy the wrong technology or certainly implement it in the wrong way, and then there's negative consequences. We recommend looking first at a analytics and quality assurance type of solution like AmplifAI, because it's analyzing what's already happening and it's providing you insights into the status quo. That can then form the scaffolding of what are those tasks we want to automate entirely with front-end automation, and or here are the tasks that we need to improve from a live agent perspective. Agent assist tools, agent efficiency type of tools are the next bucket from there that we recommend, because it's helping the live agents. And I would group Sonus into that. It's a tool that is improving the agent's efficiencies because there's clear communication and noise cancellation benefits. But those tools are not going to replace people. So it can help fight any stigma that there might be of, are we deliberately trying to replace people with machines? It also helps with reducing onboarding time, because now you have almost like a personal coach, depending on the solution, helping guide that agent through their workflow, what to say, what not to say, almost as importantly. And it can also form a proving ground for the eventual goal of, let's put some of this Q&A stuff and make it public facing. But I would advise start with having your live agents asking the co-pilot, the buddy, the questions that they're getting asked by the callers, by your customers, patients, constituents, and making sure that the answers it's delivering back to live agent are what you want them to be before eventually making that public facing. That, I think, helps mitigate the risk of the virtual agent delivering unintentionally consequential feedback to the person it's interacting with.
Great. Thank you for all that. So with that, we will jump to the Q&A. So please go ahead and chat in your questions, as some have already, into the Q&A board, and we'll go ahead and address them. The first one here I'll send over to Sean. What's the way that people understand if their data is ready, is basically what they're saying. How do we know if our data is AI ready?
Well, I think that depends on the AI solution you're trying to solve for. So, but I would say generally, once you identify the problem you're trying to solve, the question then becomes, what's the data that helps you solve that problem? And typically, it won't always just be from a single source. It'll be multiple sources. And I'll give you an example. People think for QA automation, all they need to worry about is get access to call recordings so they can transcribe them and automate the QA. The challenge they don't think about is, okay, let's just say on average, an agent takes 1,000 calls a month. Once you're analyzing 1,000 calls a month for every agent, what are you going to do with all this information, right? Just multiply that by 100 agents, by 1,000 agents, depending on your size. You have too much data now. You've gone from like low sample size, not enough data, figuring out what to action, to too much data, right? So the problem you're trying to solve is you're trying to drive better customer experience, but you don't solve that by just analyzing more conversations, because now you just have all this data and you don't know what to do, and you can just throw people at generating reports, and then all of a sudden people are looking at too much data. They don't have time to coach the agents, and you go the other way. You don't have enough time to improve your customer experience because you got too much time analyzing information. So as you think about the problem you're trying to solve, it's a combination of, do I have the data and how do I action that data without throwing additional labor at the problem, right? Because you have to create time, as JP said earlier, to be able to do things when you generate all this information. If you're trying to improve productivity, productivity is a big word, but productivity comes from lots of different things. As an example, productivity can come from handle time. Productivity could come from reducing repeat calls. Productivity could come from reducing the amount of non-productive time for an agent, like how much time they're spending in training and coaching and other what I call aux codes. So productivity can come from lots of different places, but all this data, the productivity data, sits in 3 different places. So how do I overall manage productivity? Well, then you have to make sure the data for productivity is sitting in a place that you can then manage it. And then overall, I mean, I would think about that having your data in a central, the key part of all this is having centralized data source. Either you're doing it or a vendor of yours is doing it, putting your data in a single place that you can overlay it. Because the other variable here is, and this is something that is common in a contact center, you start doing things to impact one metric, other metrics get affected. Right? For example, you could spend a lot of time on improving customer experience. You're teaching a lot of soft skills and those kinds of things. Well, guess what? Your handle time might go up. You need to be able to have all your data in one place to understand the correlations of what's going on here so that you can really drive the impact of it, right? So one thing can affect another thing, which is why having all your data sitting in one place, and that's usually the problem for most organizations, is the data is in disparate locations. And even if you have it all sitting in Power BI and Tableau, it's not connected together. It's just a bunch of separate charts that somebody has to manually go look at. So having all the data in one place is a key to overlaying it with solutions that drive different problems, drive sales improvements, CX improvements, productivity improvements, because then I can see that data and movement of that data and performance and ROIs all in one place and the impacts of it.
Yeah, great. Well, we're running up on time, so we'll end it there. Any other questions we will address after the fact. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to our panelists for providing such valuable information and kicking off our week-long event. Any final thoughts from anyone? John Pollan, I'll call you out here.
I just would advocate get off the sidelines and do something, because the pace of change is accelerating, and organizations that are taking that leap of faith, and there's a bit of that because this is all relatively new technology. Many organizations have not done this before, but those that are recognizing a return on that investment through time savings, increased revenue, whatever their key metrics are. But it boils down to having this technology, looking at it as a tool to complement your workforce and to provide you answers to questions that today may only be able to be answered through looking at a lot of spreadsheets or having a data scientist on board. AI powered solutions now, given the advances in natural language processing, have the flexibility of end users being able to prompt it or ask it questions in a very natural format and have it return answers from your data in a way that can be actionable. So get off the sidelines, have a conversation with any of us to help you identify what your wants and needs are. But the time to wait and see in this space is not being recommended by ourselves or any of the major industry analysts on this kind of stuff, because those that are adopting it successfully and are becoming AI centric will outpace those that do not.
Fantastic. If you do want to get off the sidelines and contact us, you can go to amplify.com for us, and we'll get you in contact with the right person for your inquiry. John Heaps, how about if people want to get a hold of Sonus?
Yeah, you can reach out to us at sonus.ai, and we would love to talk to you if you have any needs of offshoring, which is accent translation for India, Philippines, Latin America, as well as our noise cancellation.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great week. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks.